For all of the many distractions, the smoke and mirrors of politics, and there has been a lot of that driven by the Leader of the Opposition, there are always defining issues that make clear the very real differences between those on this side of the chamber and those on the opposite side. The issue of tackling our high energy prices is a perfect example, and this bill illustrates the difference very clearly. In Australia today, we have a very real and very urgent problem with the affordability of energy. A recent report by the ANU suggests that average electricity prices in my state of Queensland rose by as much as 136% between 2006 and 2016. As many of my constituents know, prices have risen this year by as much as 20% again. In my electorate of Fisher, I've recorded more than 500 constituents who are concerned about the cost of living and electricity's contribution to it during my first year as a federal member of parliament. It's also been raised during most of my 26 listening posts and a great many of my business visits throughout Fisher. I know that this problem is an urgent priority for the people of my electorate, and I'm determined to help to achieve a positive result for them. The Coalition's approach to tackling this problem has been tough and decisive, but it has also been informed and considered. The government sought to fully understand the energy market and the levers that drive our high prices. Through the COAG structure, we commissioned the Finkel Review to ensure that we had fully informed policy making. The government ascertained that there were issues that were driving up prices at three separate stages of supply: at the point of generation, in the networks which distribute electricity, and in the interaction between retailers and their customers. We are acting to make a difference at each level of these three stages. In the area of supply, we commissioned the Snowy Hydro 2.0 project, which will add 2,000 megawatts of power to the national electricity market, enough to power 500,000 homes. We are working with ARENA on further such projects in Tasmania, South Australia, New South Wales and my own state of Queensland. We also moved decisively to ensure the security of gas supply. The Prime Minister and the Minister for Energy and the Environment acted fairly, giving gas suppliers the opportunity to ensure a greater supply themselves. However, when necessary, the government acted with tough new regulations to ensure Australians get priority access to the gas supplies that will help to bring down prices. When it comes to the relationship between retailers and their customers, once again we got tough to make sure that Australians are getting the best deal possible. We directed the ACCC to review retail electricity prices, to examine the behaviour of retailers and to ensure that customers are getting the benefit of competition in the market. However, we also went further. Last week, the Prime Minister and the Minister for Energy and the Environment called representatives of our electricity retailers to Canberra and negotiated with them a commitment to help customers to ensure that they are getting the best possible price. This government secured promises from retailers that they will inform customers of how much they could save on a better deal, to supply simple fact sheets and to inform their customers when their discount benefits are about to expire. The government will continue to work closely with the industry going forward to ensure that families and businesses pay the best possible rate for their electricity. In contrast to this pragmatic and comprehensive coalition approach, tackling every part of the problem calmly and responsibly, what do we see from the Labor Deputy Deputy Speaker? An unedifying race to see who can raise electricity prices faster through reckless environmental ideology. You could say that this is the true form of environmental vandalism. Members opposite would deal with our energy crisis by introducing a 45% emissions reduction target, one of the highest emissions reduction targets in the developed world. You know that such a policy can only be driven by ideology and not by the interests of the people that we in this place represent, because the Labor Party's own modelling tells them what a total disaster this policy would be for ordinary Australians. Labor's modelling, when they were in government, told them that a 45% emissions reduction target would increase wholesale electricity prices by 78%. 78%. At a time when businesses are being driven to the wall and some of our constituents are going without heating because of the high price of electricity. The Business Council of Australia called such a move risky and unnecessary. It won't end there, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Weatherall Labor government in South Australia has shown what a Labor green future would look like. 45% was not enough for them, Deputy Speaker. No, South Australian Labor insists that only a 50% target will do for them. The results for them have been nothing less than devastating for South Australia. It comes as no surprise that South Australia has the highest power prices, the national electricity market, but that was only the beginning. Labor left 1.7 million South Australians in darkness in blackouts in December, January and February. In Australia, in the 21st century, it is unparliamentary, Mr Speaker.
Yeah.
Millions of people spent days without electricity because the government had failed to ensure that there were enough generators of the right kind to provide it. The other leg of Labor's plan for electricity prices is, in the words of its Climate Action Plan, to kick-start the closure of coal-fired power plants. Labor intend to force the closure of our lowest cost, most reliable form of energy. The effect on you guys can't quite make up your mind what you want to do. The effect on the electricity prices paid by our struggling businesses and consumers is well attested. In Victoria, when the Hazelwood plant was forced to close, electricity prices went up immediately by up to $135. In South Australia, the pushing out of caused a 50% jump in prices for the large industrial users on which the state relies. We shouldn't be surprised by these policies, Mr Deputy Speaker. Labor's record on electricity prices is clear. During the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years, prices doubled, an increase of 101%. When the coalition was returned in 2013, our immediate action brought a fall in prices of up to 12.5%. That is the difference. Decisive and pragmatic action to reduce prices from the coalition. Inflated, ideological, virtue signalling from Labor, which costs jobs, wrecks businesses and raises prices for all Australians. The bill before the House today demonstrates that difference once again and addresses the third part of the pressures that are causing high electricity prices for Australian consumers and businesses. Energy networks operate the physical infrastructure that delivers our electricity, the poles and wires. Within each state, these networks operate in a monopoly position which, unless properly controlled, can substantially increase the price of electricity. Network costs already make up between 40% and 50% of the price paid by consumers. If we can control that cost, we can make a big difference for all Australians and Australian businesses. The necessary control exists in the form of the Australian Energy Regulator, but since 2008 the effectiveness of that regulator has been fatally undermined by the limited merits review process. Although set up with good intentions, this process has ended up acting solely and consistently as a means for networks to game the system and generate inflated, monopolised profits at the expense of ordinary Australians. Since 2008, the review process has been employed by networks to challenge 32 out of the 51 Australian energy regulator decisions that have been made. In a balanced and working review mechanism, one could expect that some decisions would favour the consumer and some decisions would favour the networks. But that is not what has happened with limited merits review. In 9 years, not a single one of the 32 challenges has resulted in reduced costs for consumers. In fact, as a result of the limited merits review, Australian businesses and householders have paid $6.5 billion more for their electricity. We need to end this rort. The COAG Energy Council has acknowledged that this system is failing and is causing higher prices for consumers, and yet COAG have been unable to agree to scrap it. Mr Deputy Speaker, the price of electricity in Australia is risking people's future in our community today. There are small business owners who face the very real prospect of losing their long-cherished dreams of having all that they have worked for and sacrificed destroyed by the outrageous cost of energy. The livelihoods of thousands of small business owners and the hundreds of thousands of Australians they employ are at risk unless we act soon. Worse, this energy crisis affects not only the prosperity of our people, but in some cases their very lives. When there are vulnerable Australians who cannot turn on the heat on a sub-zero winter's night, or who cannot cool their homes in a 40-degree heatwave, then lives are at stake. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, we have to act. I know that the people of Fisher are deeply, deeply concerned about this issue. It is something that they tell me about every day. I'm pleased to see that this government is taking decisive action, and I commend the bill to the House.